Happy Tuesday, learners. We are so happy that you are back learning with us. This is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade English language arts. Of course, if you are not in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, you are still welcome to learn with us. This week, we have been studying narratives. That's right. How many times have we said narratives in the past 6 lessons? Well, we're just going to keep adding it more and more. That is our focus. We are reading stories, we are writing stories. This week, we are even writing fictional stories, fictional narratives, which are imagined or make-believe stories. But throughout it all, we have this essential question. Our question is, how do authors use narrative elements to write a story? The main elements we've been talking about: character, setting, plot. The plot, remember, is your beginning, middle, and end. The plot is how you introduce your rising actions, your climax, your falling actions, and your resolution. We've been studying that all week. And we're going to continue for 2 more days. And then next week, we have some great surprises prepared for you. Since today is Tuesday, it's Word Study Day. Today, we are going to learn some words that are going to help us in our writing. All words help us in our writing, in our speaking, in our reading. So you ready to study with me? Let's go. Just to remind you, word study is learning about words and finding patterns in the words that we read. Look for those patterns. As we get older, we notice more and more patterns in words. And I think the more you know about words, the more powerful you are when you're speaking, reading, writing. All of it's good. Today's focus is on adjectives. Adjectives. You've probably heard that word before. You probably already have an idea about adjectives, but we're just going to go over it again today. Adjectives. Today we're going to study how we can use different words to describe things. That's what adjectives do. They describe. Dog, butterfly, book, ball. These are not adjectives. These are all things that you can touch. Things that you can touch are nouns. A book, you can touch. A dog, you can touch. A ball, you can touch. And if you're lucky, you can touch a butterfly. These are all nouns. We need words to learn how to describe these nouns. The words that we use to describe are called adjectives. Let's do some imagination work. Are you ready? The first word up here, book. I want you to close your eyes and imagine a book. How large is it? What color is it? Is it hard? Is it soft? I have a book. Let's see if we imagine the same. I haven't used any describing words yet. Is this the book that you imagined? Well, probably not, because I didn't give you any adjectives. When someone describes something using adjectives, it helps the other person imagine it better. Yellow, tiny, big, colossal. These are all adjectives. These are describing words. If I say, oh, did you see that tiny You might say, tiny what? That tiny. Well, here's the thing. These adjectives need nouns. They need to work together. So if I say, did you see that tiny butterfly? Then you might look around and say, no, I missed it. Or yes, I did. So the adjectives that have the blue background need nouns. They need to describe things. We can describe books as yellow. The yellow book is over on the counter. Can you imagine a yellow book? I might say the tiny book can fit in your pocket. Whoa, that must be a very small book if it can fit in your pocket. The big book, the colossal book. Colossal is a grander, bigger way to describe something large. If I say a dog, what comes to mind? It might be a dog that you have at your home. You might be thinking of a big dog, a tiny dog, a yellow dog, a colossal dog. Were you thinking of a stuffed dog? I don't know if you were. You might have been thinking of a real dog. Stuffed and real, those are adjectives as well. Let's keep going. Think of a ball. Can you gesture how large it is? Is it tiny? Is it big? Is it colossal? What color is it? I have a ball here. Let's see if the one you're imagining is the ball I have. My ball is small. My ball is pink. Is the ball that you're imagining pink? Pink is an adjective. It describes the outside of the ball. So when you use adjectives, you can be very specific. Instead of saying, have you seen my ball? You might say, have you seen my small pink ball? If I feel it too, this is very hard. All of those words are describing words. All of those words help to explain or describe this ball. What about a butterfly? Now that the trees are green and the flowers are everywhere, I am noticing an increase in butterflies. I have a butterfly here, or butterfly wings. Do you think they are small? Do you think they are yellow? Or are they colossal? These are colossal butterfly wings. These are fictional. These are not real. These are a costume. Can you imagine if you saw butterfly wings this colossal? You would probably be in the Amazon forest. So we use adjectives to describe. Yellow, tiny, big, colossal, those all describe the outside. If you described me, you might say the lady, the woman with brown hair, the woman wearing the striped black and white shirt. Those describe my outside. We can also use adjectives to describe the inside. Adventurous, someone that likes to go on adventures. Interesting, something that gets our attention. It's the opposite of boring. Helpful. Calm. When we look at our nouns, like dog, ball, butterfly, book, we can also use adjectives to describe them on the inside. That means things that we can't always see. Can you imagine a helpful dog? A dog that is helpful probably assists humans in different ways. There are service dogs that can open doors for humans. There are service dogs that can pick up things for other humans. Perhaps you've seen that before. My dog keeps me protected. I think she's very helpful. What about adventurous? Sometimes I think butterflies are adventurous. They're always flying to new adventures. Books can be adventurous as well. If you're reading a story that's filled with twists and turns and plots, that can be adventurous as well. What about calm? Can you think of a calm butterfly or a calm dog? When I think of a ball, I don't really think of it as being calm because these are more personality words that describe how things, mostly humans or animals, act. So we can use adjectives to describe the outside or the inside. Adjectives to describe how something looks is called the appearance. Those are traits that we see on the outside, like colossal, yellow, tiny, big. We also have adjectives to describe personality. It's on the inside. Things like adventurous, interesting, calm, helpful. The trick is we don't always know the best way to describe someone or something unless we get to know it better. So, I have an activity for us. In this activity, we're going to have to look at different adjectives and describe, are those words describing inside traits or outside traits? Let's play. We have two categories. This will be how you play at home as well. If you wanted to take a blank sheet of paper, you could divide it into two sections: personality or inside traits, and appearance, outside traits. To practice, let's think about these different adjectives. Let's think about if we can see them. Sometimes it might be something that we need to discuss. So this word over here, brutal. I think of a wrestler as being brutal. Brutal is not always easy to see. Brutal is personality. So I'm going to drag brutal to personality. Beautiful. These are all opinion words, but beautiful is what you see on the outside. That is an appearance. Large is something that you see as well. That's appearance. Pink, that's an easy one. Pink is on the outside. Pink is appearance. Bloodthirsty? Bloodthirsty. I'm thinking of being thirsty for blood. Wow. You know who are bloodthirsty? Ladybugs. Those tiny little bugs. They love eating other bugs. They are bloodthirsty. Bloodthirsty is a trait on the inside. Small. That's on the outside as well. That's appearance. Tiny. That's on the outside as well. Loyal. Oh, what a good word. They'll stick with you to the end. Loyal. You can't always see it when you look at someone. You have to know it. Loyal is a personality trait. Innocent, well, sometimes we think just by looking at someone we know if they're innocent, but you have to get to know someone. Innocent is a personality inside trait. Ooh, clever. You can think quickly. You have good ideas. Clever. You can't tell if someone's clever just by looking at them. You have to get to know them. Clever is a personality trait. And fierce. Unstoppable. Fierce. It's a personality trait again. That's something that we'll know when we get to know someone or characters even better. So to practice at home, here's your assignment. Choose 3 characters from books that you've read. You have to know these characters. That's how we can tell personality traits. Think of or look for words that describe the characters. On a sheet of blank paper, categorize the words into personality, which are inside traits, and appearance, which are outside traits. If you have a character like Diary of a Wimpy Kid's Greg Heffley, how would you describe his appearance on the outside? His age, his hair color, his size? How would you describe his inside traits, his personality? So have fun using adjectives to describe characters or nouns. I hope you've had some chances to think about these words, use these words, and next up, when Mrs. Kraft reads aloud, you may hear some of these adjectives as well. We'll see you soon, learners. Thank you.
Hello, learners. It's Mrs. Kraft here. And I know you just worked with Miss Abby on a part of speech called adjectives. And she used some words that I'm going to work on today also with you. But what I wanted to do first, because as she said, this is our fiction writing week, right? Remember, we're talking about those narrative story elements. And I wanted to talk to you about the most important story element in any story that you read or story that you write. And that is going to be characters. Characters are the things that interact in your story. They're the things that take the action in the story. And without that, it would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? So I want you to think about your favorite book, your favorite character in that book, and why you like them. What made them stand out to you? So as Miss Abby said, our characters have traits, don't they? Traits mean things that the character looks like and acts like and does. So those are our character traits. You also have some traits. You have some personality traits. That could be, are you a kind person? Are you a good student? Are you a hard worker? Those are traits that make us who we are. And that's why in a story, characters are the critical part. Every story that you love, you probably love it because it has amazing characters. So characters, they can be anything. They could be people, but they could also be animals. Remember, we talked about our fictional narratives, and often it includes magic or animals that talk. So it could be animals, it could also be things. I could write a story about the pen and the glasses, right? They could talk to each other. I could make them animated, and they could become characters as long as they have some adventures or they take some action. So those characters can be anything. But remember, when our fiction stories, it's probably going to be some kind of a make-believe action. And what's the opposite of fiction? What means a real story? Do you remember? Say it into your TV. Did you say nonfiction? And if you did, that's absolutely right. So non-fiction means not make-believe. And fiction means it's make-believe. So let's take a look. Another word that we've been working on last week and this week again is a strange kind of a word called dialogue. It's up here, dialogue. Look at that spelling. It's interesting, isn't it? We talked about that last week, and that's just a fancy word for speaking. If you want to go up to your sister and say, and you could be fancy, right, and say, let's go have a dialogue. That just means, let's have a chat. So that's what happens in our stories when our characters are speaking to each other. So characters and dialogue are two critical aspects of when you read a story and when you write a story. So dialogue is when two or more characters speak, usually to each other. And we're going to read a passage today from a book that's definitely one of my favorites. And we're going to look at two characters who speak to each other. And this is really important because as they speak to each other, we learn about them. We learn about some of those character traits. We learn not only what's on the outside, but also what's on the inside and how they're feeling and how they're acting. So the story that we're going to read today is Charlotte's Web. And of course, it's a pretty long book, so we're not going to read the whole story. We're going to read just a small portion of it because I want to share with you two characters in the story that are crucially important to the outcome of the story and the way that it unfolds, and also important on how they interact with each other. So the passage has dialogue in it, and you're going to discover more about the characters as I read this. Now, if you haven't read Charlotte's Web, it's a really good level for you to read, probably. And if you have some hard words, you could have somebody help you or read it with you. Do read it. I highly recommend it. Put it on your summer reading list. And there's also a couple of Charlotte's Web's movies. So once you read it, you could treat yourself to the movie. Maybe a Good Friday afternoon or Sunday afternoon event where you could watch the movie. That would be great. So let me begin by reading a passage from Charlotte's Web. "You mean you eat flies?" gasped Wilbur. "Certainly. Flies, bugs, grasshoppers, choice beetles, moths, butterflies, tasty cockroaches, gnats, midges, daddy longlegs, centipedes, mosquitoes, crickets, anything that is careless enough to get caught in my web. I have to live, don't I?" Who do you think is saying that? Did you guess Charlotte? She's the spider? If you did, you're absolutely right. "Why, yes. Yes, of course," said Wilbur. "Do they taste good?" "Delicious. Of course, I don't really eat them. I drink them. Drink their blood." "I love blood," said Charlotte, and her pleasant voice grew thin, even thinner and more pleasant. "Oh, don't say that," groaned Wilbur. "Please don't say anything like that." "Why not? It's true, and I have to say what is true. I am not entirely happy about my diet of flies and bugs, but it's the way I'm made. A spider has to pick a living somehow or other, and I happen to be a trapper. I just naturally build a web and trap flies and other insects. My mother was a trapper before me. Her mother was a trapper well before her. All of our family have been trappers. Way back for thousands and thousands of years, we spiders have been laying for flies and bugs. It's a miserable inheritance, said Wilbur gloomily. He was sad because his new friend was so bloodthirsty. Yes, it is, agreed Charlotte, but I can't help it. I don't know how the first spider, in the early days of the world, happened to think up this fancy idea of spinning a web. But she did, and it was clever of her too. And since then, all of us spiders have had to do the same worked trick. It's not a bad pitch, on the whole. It's cruel, said Wilbur, who did not intend to be argued out of his position. Well, you can't talk, said Charlotte. You have your meals brought to you in a pail. Nobody feeds me. I have to get my own living. I live by my wits. I have to be sharp and clever, lest I go hungry. I have to think things out, catch what I can, take what comes. And it just so happens, my friend, that what comes is flies and insects and bugs. And furthermore, said Charlotte, shaking one of her legs, do you realize that if I didn't catch bugs and eat them, bugs would increase and multiply and get so numerous that they would destroy the earth, wipe out everything? Really? Said Wilbur. I wouldn't want that to happen. Perhaps your web is a good thing after all. The goose had been listening to this conversation and chuckling to herself. There are a lot of things Wilbur doesn't know about life, she thought. He's really a very innocent little pig. He doesn't even know what's going to happen to him around Christmas time. He has no idea that Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy are plotting to kill him. And the goose raised herself a bit and poked her eggs a little further under her so that they would receive the full heat from her warm body and soft feathers. Charlotte stood quietly over the fly, preparing to eat it. Wilbur lay down and closed his eyes. He was tired from his wakeful night and from the excitement of meeting someone for the first time. A breeze brought him the smell of clover, the sweet-smelling world beyond his fence. Well, he thought, I've got a new friend, all right, but what a gamble friendship is. Charlotte is fierce, brutal, scheming, bloodthirsty, everything I don't like. How can I learn to like her, even though she is pretty and, of course, clever? Wilbur was merely suffering the doubts and fears that often go with finding a new friend. In good time, he was to discover that he was mistaken about Charlotte. Underneath her rather blood and cruel exterior, she had a kind heart, and she was to prove loyal and true to the very end. So I want to now take a look at a character study of our spider, Charlotte, and our pig, Wilbur. So I have up here some of the things that were written in the story about our two characters. Charlotte the spider. She's loyal. She's bloodthirsty, kind, hardworking, clever, scary, black, and she has lots of legs. So what do you think about those things? Is that a character that you're going to say, oh, that's my favorite character in the book? Especially because she's maybe a spider. And I know I don't love spiders in my house. They're really good for the environment, aren't they? And we need them to eat the bugs. But sometimes they seem really creepy. They have 8 legs, right? Their name is arachnid. That just sounds scary to me. But we learn as we read the story that Charlotte becomes an incredible friend. She changes the outcome of the story, and she saves Wilbur's life. That's a good friendship. Let's look at some of our character traits of Wilbur the pig. Wilbur is pretty young, right? He's small. He's a little bit weak. He's also scared because he came out as a really tiny little guy. But then he becomes brave. He's got strong and determined. He's young, he's playful, and he's just a little bit lazy. So I would like to take a look now. Here's a picture of Charlotte so we can get one in our mind. She looks kind of thoughtful in this picture to me, but she's also dark and she has lots of legs. So I want to talk about those inside traits and then those outside traits that we have that you worked on with Miss Abby. So if we're going to look at let's put our name Charlotte right here so we know we're talking about Charlotte, and you can work along with me and do this chart at home. So here we have our inside traits. What's Charlotte like inside? And then we have our outside traits. So help me fill in a chart. If you have some ideas, go ahead and write those in. So let's start with our outside traits because I think those are a little bit easier to get. To me, the first thing that jumps out at me of the spider is she's black with legs. She's got lots of legs, right? Do you remember how many a spider has? Did you say 8? Perfect. And the spider has 8 black, kind of hairy legs. What else about a spider can you think of? It just comes to mind. Well, they eat bugs, don't they? And that's actually a really good thing. How about they're bloodthirsty? Remember, she said she feeds the blood of the bugs to her babies. So she is bloodthirsty. Let's go over and look at our inside traits because we have this happening on the outside, but we have something very deeper happening inside. So if we look over here at our inside traits, I'm going to go with clever. I'm going to go with hard working. By the end of the story, you'll see if you read it, Charlotte gets really tired. She's super honest. She tells Wilbur exactly what's going on. Sometimes he doesn't want to hear it, but she tells him anyway. Can you come up with another trait for the bottom? I'll bet you can. Find an outside trait and think of an inside trait. Now let's take a look at our second character that we want to look at. Look at that face. He is happy. He's super cute. So he looks completely different from Charlotte on the outside. This is our guy Wilbur. Let's talk about some character traits of our friend Mr. Wilbur. What does he look like outside? Well, he's young. Oh, sorry, that's an inside trait. I'm going to go back over here. First, I'm going to put his name so we remember who our friend is. And outside, he is young. And to me, he has a really sweet face. Now, that could be an inside or an outside trait. Do you think? Yeah, but I'm going to leave it here just because he looks very sweet on the outside. Let's go to do some inside. What's he like inside? Well, to me, he was questioning Charlotte. So he was kind of thoughtful. He didn't always like his thoughts, did he? So I might put, what else do you want to put over there for our friend Wilbur? Can you think of one? Say one into your TV if you think of it. He's pretty spoiled, right? He gets his food brought to him in a pail. but I would say he's a little bit adventurous because he wants to make new friends. And that makes us like him. What else do you see on the outside? I think he's pink. We could have that as a color, couldn't we? A little pink pig. So we have thoughtful, we have spoiled, we have adventurous, and we have young, sweet, and pink. They seem like an unlikely pair, don't they? Our friend Wilbur and our friend Charlotte. But they get together and they help each other, believe it or not. So I really want you to read this story and see the ending of it. Let me erase this over here. Let's go back and take another quick look at our friend Wilbur. And actually, I want to go back to this screen because I want to remind you of some of those character traits that we have, the list that we made. So we could go through these and we could label them as inside or outside. Loyal. I'm going to put an I there. Bloodthirsty. Outside. Kind. Inside. Hardworking. I'm going to go outside, but that could be an inside also. Clever. That's an inside trait. That's who Charlotte really, truly is. Scary. Outside. Black. Outside. Lots of legs. Outside. And then you could probably take a look at those for Wilbur and do those on your own, right? Small, weak, scared, brave, strong and determined, young, playful, and a little bit lazy. All right, so now you have a good concept of what our inside traits are, what makes us who we are, and the outside traits, what people see when they look at us. And sometimes we have that first impression that's not always right. So we need to dig a little bit deeper. All right, Miss Abby's going to come up with you next. And she's going to work on continuing that fictional narrative that you're writing and developing those characters. So thank you for joining me, friends. We'll see you soon.
Hi, writers. I'm so excited for today's lesson because we get to use our imaginations, our adjectives, to develop our character for our story, and just create new possibilities. If you don't know, we started reading The Mysteries of Harris Burdick yesterday. Mrs. Kraft read us the introduction that told us these are all the beginnings of stories or parts of stories that children must finish writing. Online, we have the resources for this book. So you can view all the different illustrations and fragments of the stories to write your own fictional narrative. Yesterday, I was inspired by the fragment, just the part of the story called Under the Rug. It said 2 weeks passed and it happened again. There was something about the word it. It happened again that got my imagination flowing. What happened again? Then I looked at the illustration. I looked at all of the different elements of the illustration and my imagination started going. I started creating a whole plot line around this one moment in someone's imagination. No, this story did not really happen. This is fiction. But my job is to write a story about what happened. All I'm going to use for this is my imagination. I'm going to use fake characters, a fake setting, and fake storylines for my plot. This is a total fictional narrative. I am an author. So are you, because we write stories. Remember our essential question? How do authors use narrative elements to write a story? Well, one of the most important elements of a narrative is character. So let's develop our character today using adjectives, internal and external traits. So if you don't already have your writer's notebook out, please grab it. I'll remind you about some of my pages that I've worked on. This is my SCAR story organization, but that was a personal narrative. This was a real story that happened. Here's my draft. I love going through my writer's notebook to see all of my work. Yesterday, I started working on an organization map, a graphic organizer, for my fictional narrative. I have 6 scenes. These scenes connect to our story mountain or plot that we've been talking about. Scene 1 is where I introduce my character and my settings. That's called my introduction. Scenes 2 and 3 are called rising action. That's when I start building up. Scenes 2 and 3 are rising action scenes. Scene 4, some people may use the word pivotal. The pivotal point or the climax is the point of no return where the story changes and is unchangeable. Scene 5 is when we start falling, the excitement falls, and then scene 6 is our resolution or our conclusion. This is in mountain form. This one is a little bit more linear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just to remind you, I took the page from the story under the rug. My imagination started flowing, thinking about what was happening in this illustration. The only clues I have from the book is 2 weeks pass and it happened again. What happened again? That's when my imagination came in. At home, you may have a total different story. I imagined this was a little kitty cat that wanted to live with this character. You may have had something more nefarious. Maybe this was a rat. Maybe this was a human's head popping up. Oh! It depends on the tone that you want. Did you want something scary and mysterious? Or something lighthearted? I wanted something sweet, lighthearted. So I imagined this was a lonely kitten that wanted a home, a forever home. So I built my story around that. This image I put at scene 3. And I used the same words from the text. It says right here, 2 weeks passed and it happened again. 2 weeks passed and it happened again. I lifted it from the story to put in my fictional story. A few other ideas I had yesterday were to start by introducing my character, Henry. Henry, I figured, was lonely, lives by himself, a little grumpy. And then in scene 2, I talk about how Henry's reading one day and he starts hearing this noise. He looks around, he investigates, sees nothing. 2 weeks pass and it happened again. This time he's ready to eliminate whatever is under the rug. And scene 4 is when Carla, the kitty, reveals herself. Says, Henry, wait. Ugh, of course this can't really happen. A kitten can't really say, Henry, wait. So this is a fictional story. But I also show that Henry's heart starts to grow. Then my scene 5, they're really starting to get to know each other. They're really becoming best companions, best friends. And then 10 years later, I show how they have just grown to be absolute wonderful friends. I have it planned out, but I'm going to need to write it. So starting with scene 1, I want to introduce my readers to the character. If you are writing about this story as well, think about your character. What is the character's name? So let's use a chart to help us organize our thoughts. So I have named my fake character, Henry. When I describe Henry, I'm going to use adjectives. I will describe his appearance. His appearance means, what does he look like on the outside? Then I want to talk about Henry's personality. That's what he's like on the inside. I don't really know this character. This is a character from my imagination. When you build characters, it's good before you start writing to come up with some adjectives that you can use to describe them. On the outside, I will say he was alone. I'll say he was, how about 62 years old. And, well, I can even say he lived alone. His personality. A little grumpy. This is a imagination. Grumpy. He did not say hi to his neighbors. I'm just making this up. He did not call his family on the phone to say happy birthday. This character loves to read, so I could say a bookworm. This character is very quiet, so that would be something on the outside, that he's not making a lot of noise. But on the inside, I might call that reserved, not very outward. When I have an idea about this character, that's when I can begin to write and introduce this character to my audience. All of this planning is really important in the writing process. Once my brain has all of these ideas down, then the words come flowing, hopefully. So I'm going to use this character map about Henry to help me start my introduction. So I'm going to start my draft. This is called Under the Rug. And I like starting by talking about the setting. I'll indent. It was a cold and rainy November night. I didn't really say when, but I gave November, and then I used some adjectives: cold, rainy, night. So I'm telling about when the setting was. Henry was alone, reading his favorite book. For the 4th time. I think if someone reads the same book 4 times, they must love reading. Have you read a book 4 times? Let's see, what did I not say? I said he was alone. He was alone. I didn't mention his age. He often read alone for many of his 2 years. Some said he was grumpy. But he thought being alone with a book was peaceful. I'm trying to introduce the character to you. That's an important part of writing a narrative. It was a cold, let me use my magic headphones. It was a cold and rainy November night. Henry was alone reading his favorite book for the 4th time. He often read alone for many of his 62 years. Some said he was a grump, but he thought being alone with a book was peaceful. I think I'm telling you a lot about my character. So I'm going to look back. I keep turning back to my graphic organizer. I said the character Henry, lonely, lives by himself, a little grumpy, but I added some more. If I want to transition to my scene 2, remember I just need to add a passage of time. I have that from my notes over here. Slowly, finally, next, then, that night, the next day, moments later, seconds later. So as I transition to my second paragraph, I'm just going to look at my scenes to see how can I show that time or setting has changed so that I can move on. I'm going to finish this story at home tonight. But as you're writing, I want to remind you, narratives should be organized. Narratives can be planned before. When you're planning your narrative, make sure you have a climax, that important point of no return at the top. Then you can think how to build up to that. 3rd graders, 4th graders, 5th graders, you have stories in your imagination. Use your writer's notebook. Organize some ideas. Show us how you make this graphic organizer and share it with us. We would love to see what work you are making at home, writers. Nothing makes me happier than seeing the imagination of children. I can't wait. Friends, it's been a great day of learning. Thank you so much for learning at home with us at APS. Have a great day.